Fiancée ran off with my brother and left me at the altar. 2 years later, she showed up at my door, claiming she had finally seen the toxicity of my family and wanted my help. 2 years ago, I was left standing at the altar, humiliated and heartbroken. My fiancé dumped me an hour before the wedding and ran off with my brother. I never saw it coming, or maybe I just ignored the signs because I loved her so much. We had been together for 5 years and I thought we were happy, but looking back, it's clear I was blind to a lot of things. My family never treated me as their priority. My parents always favored my brother. He was the golden child, charming, successful, and the type of guy people naturally gravitated toward. I was the quieter one, the one they always compared to him, making me feel like I didn't quite measure up. It was constant growing up. Why can't you be more like your brother? Or, your brother did this, why can't you? I thought things might change as we got older, but they didn't. If anything, it got worse. Anyway, my fiancée was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. She was smart, beautiful, and driven, but she had a selfish side. It wasn't obvious at first. It showed up in small ways, insisting things always go her way or never apologizing when she hurt my feelings. I brushed it off because I loved her and believed we were building a life together. I never imagined she'd betray me the way she did. The wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Everything was ready. The venue, the food, the guests. I woke up nervous but excited, thinking I'd soon be starting a new chapter with the woman I loved. Then, an hour before the ceremony, she called me. Her voice was calm, almost cold, as she told me she couldn't go through with it. She didn't love me anymore. Then, she dropped the real bombshell. She had been seeing someone else. That someone was my brother. She didn't even seem sorry about it. She said she didn't want to hurt me, but felt she had to follow her heart. I didn't even have time to process her words before I hung up. My parents, who were at the venue, already knew. My brother had told them earlier that morning. Instead of supporting me, they were trying to calm things down to avoid embarrassing themselves. When I confronted them, they defended her. They said things like, maybe it's for the best, and you wouldn't want to marry someone who doesn't love you. My mom even had the nerve to suggest I should be happy for them. My dad was no better. He just stood there and told me to keep it together. It wasn't until later that I found out my parents had played a part in all this. My brother had always been interested in her, and apparently they thought she was too good for me. They decided she would be a better match for him. They'd been encouraging her to choose him for months, and even promised her financial support if she left me for him. I had no idea my family could be that manipulative. I walked out of the venue that day and didn't look back. I left everything behind. My family, my friends, even my hometown. I couldn't stand being around any of them. I moved to a different state and started over. I found a job, a small apartment, and spent the next 2 years rebuilding my life. It was hard at first. I didn't know anyone, and the loneliness was crushing. But as time passed, I found peace. I made new friends, started therapy, and focused on myself. For the first time in my life, I didn't tell anyone where I was or how to contact me. I wanted nothing to do with the people who had betrayed me. Then 2 years later, my ex-fiancée showed up at my door. I had just gotten home from work, and when I opened the door, I barely recognized her. She looked exhausted and worn down, like she hadn't slept or eaten properly in days. Her once confident, polished demeanor was gone. She was shaking, and her eyes were red from crying. She told me that life with my brother had turned into a nightmare. He was controlling, emotionally abusive, and unfaithful. The golden child everyone adored was a monster behind closed doors. They had gotten married shortly after our wedding fiasco and now had a child together. But things had fallen apart. My parents, who had once been so eager to support her, turned on her when she stopped meeting their expectations. She said she felt trapped, isolated, and afraid. She was planning to divorce my brother, but was terrified of what he might do. He had money, connections, and a mean streak. She was scared he'd ruin her financially and take their child away. She came to me because she thought I could help. She wanted me to testify in court about how toxic and manipulative my family was. She thought my testimony could strengthen her case and help her keep custody of her child. I stood there listening to her, feeling nothing but anger. She had made her choices. She knew exactly what kind of person my brother was, and she still chose him over me. She let my family manipulate her and walked away without looking back. And now, after everything she put me through, she expected me to come to her rescue. I told her no. I didn't yell or argue. I just said no and closed the door. It felt good, but it didn't last. A couple of days later, the text started. Somehow she told people about her visit, and word spread. Old friends, even mutual acquaintances, started reaching out to me. They called me selfish, bitter, and cowardly for refusing to help a woman in need. Her former maid of honor, who was supposed to stand by her at our wedding, sent me a long message about how I wasn't man enough to step up. She said I was proving my family right, that I was weak and didn't deserve my ex in the first place. I couldn't believe the audacity. These were people who had vanished from my life after the wedding. None of them had stood up for me back then. But now they thought they had the right to lecture me. I ignored most of it, but it still hurt. They had no idea what I'd been through, and they didn't care. They just wanted me to fix a problem that wasn't mine to fix. Now I'm left wondering if I did the right thing. I owe my ex-fiancée nothing. She made her bed, and now she has to lie in it. But there's a child involved, an innocent kid who didn't choose this mess. Part of me wonders if my refusal to help might hurt him in the long run. At the same time, helping her would mean letting my family and her drama back into my life, and I'm not sure I'm willing to do that. Reddit, what would you have done in my place? Did I make the right call, or am I being selfish too? Update 1. I really didn't expect my post to blow up like it did. Honestly, when I first started typing out everything that happened, I wasn't sure if anyone would even care, but here I am, reading through hundreds of comments. Some supportive, some tough to read, and it's been a lot to process. To everyone who reached out with advice or even just shared their thoughts, thank you. Whether you agree with me or not, I'm grateful for the support and the different perspectives. Writing all of this out has definitely helped me sort through a lot of emotions, and I've found some clarity, but it's also stirred up a lot of stuff I thought I had buried deep down. So after I posted, I spent the rest of the evening reading through comments. Some people pointed out things I hadn't even considered, like the fact that if I were to get involved with my ex-fiance's legal stuff, it could potentially make things worse, not only for me, but for the kid as well. There were others who were straightforward, telling me I should stay as far away as possible, and that my ex made her bed. Now she can lie in it. Those comments honestly made me feel better about my initial reaction to her showing up at my door. But then there were the others who brought up a different angle. The child. I mean, I know I don't owe my ex-fiancée anything, but hearing so many people say the child is the one who's innocent in all of this, it got to me. A lot of you said I should try to do something for the kid without getting dragged back into the toxic mess that is my family. And that's what I've been struggling with ever since. I really don't want to have anything to do with her or my brother again. I don't want to be the hero or the good guy in a situation where I'm just setting myself up for more heartache. But then again, I feel like I should do something, even if it's not for her. She's funny though. After reading so many of your comments, I started wondering if maybe there was something I could do that wouldn't involve me talking to her again or getting sucked back into the drama. I even considered calling a lawyer just to ask what would happen if I did testify or if I helped her in some way. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it's still not my job to fix any of this, and especially not when it means dealing with my toxic family again. But the guilt of knowing the kid is caught in the middle of this mess, that guilt doesn't go away. And then, like clockwork, my brother decided to show up in the picture again. Yesterday morning, I got an email from him. Yes, my brother, the one who hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. And the last time we did, it was the day I called off my wedding. His email was cold, and honestly, just reading it made my stomach drop. It was short and to the point. I heard our ex-fiancée came to you for help. It's a huge mistake. If you get involved, stay out of family matters. You'll regret it. I stared at that message for way too long. I was tempted to reply, but then I thought, why the hell should I? This guy is the one who pushed me out of my own life. he was the one who pulled all this manipulation with my ex, and now he thinks he can tell me what to do. The audacity. I don't even know if audacity is a strong enough word for how I feel about him, but I didn't respond. I couldn't be bothered. It's honestly laughable how entitled he still feels. He has no idea what I've gone through or what I've had to deal with all these years, and yet he thinks he gets to decide how I should handle things. No thanks. That's when the phone call came in. It was from an unknown number, and I'm sure you can guess who it was. Yep, it was my mother. After 2 years of radio silence, she decided this was the time to call me. The second I picked up and heard her voice, I was immediately reminded of all the reasons I had cut ties with her and my dad. I couldn't even get a, "How have you been?" or "I miss you" before she launched right into it. She started talking about the divorce, my brother, and how I needed to be the bigger person and keep the peace for the sake of the family. That was when I snapped. I don't even remember what I said exactly, but I know I told her I didn't want to hear any more of it. She kept on, though, talking about how hard things were for my brother and how I was punishing the child if I got involved. I told her I didn't care and that I wasn't going to fix their mess anymore. I hung up after that. That conversation left me so numb. For some reason, it reminded me of everything my parents have done to me, how they always favored my brother, how they enabled his worst behavior, and how they'd always expect me to be the quiet one who just took whatever they threw at me. It's never been about me. Not once. I've always been the backup son, the one who was supposed to just deal with whatever crap came my way. Hearing my mom defend my brother again was like a slap in the face. It made me realize nothing's changed. Not with my parents and not with him. To be honest, that's why I'm not going back. As tempting as it is to take the moral high ground, I know I'd only be putting myself back in the same toxic cycle. So, I'm done. I made my peace with walking away, but this situation has opened a lot of old wounds that I thought I had healed. But as much as I want to just shut it all out and pretend it's not happening, I can't ignore the fact that the kid is in the middle of all of this. I keep thinking about how helpless he must feel watching all of this unfold. I know he's innocent, but what if he's being emotionally manipulated like my ex was? It kills me to think about it, but still, I keep telling myself this isn't my fight. I've been through enough already, and I'm not about to get pulled back into their drama. So I've been sitting with these feelings for a couple of days now, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to just move on, leave them to their mess, and walk away for good. But then there's another part of me that's wondering if maybe I could help the child somehow without getting back in the middle of everything. I don't know what the right move is yet, but I do know one thing. I can't let myself go back to the toxic person I was before, the one who always tried to fix everything for everyone else while ignoring my own needs. I've worked way too hard to get here to let them drag me back in. But that guilt about the kid, yeah. It's still there, and it's not going away anytime soon. What would you guys do in my situation? Would you help, or would you just walk away completely? I'm struggling to find the balance. Update 2. I thought things might settle down after my last update, but I was wrong. Instead, things have escalated even further, and I'm honestly questioning how I ever put up with these people for so long. It's like the universe is testing my resolve. Every time I think I've built a wall high enough to block them out, someone finds a way to get over it or slip through a crack. Since my mother's call, I've been absolutely bombarded. It started with a few texts from extended family, my aunts, uncles, cousins, and now it's like they've all formed this united front. They're coming at me from all angles, telling me I'm ruining the family by not supporting my brother, or worse, by not staying out of his family matter, when that's exactly what I am doing. It's like they think I'm obligated to get involved just because we share the same blood. Some of them have even gone as far as saying I'm holding a grudge and not being a man about it. I've spent the last 2 years working hard to rebuild my life and move on from the toxic mess they created, and now they think I should throw it all away just to get back in the drama. It's exhausting. Honestly, they don't understand that walking away wasn't some decision made out of spite. It was out of necessity. I couldn't continue living in that family dynamic. It was suffocating, but they don't want to hear that. To them, family means loyalty no matter what, even if that loyalty comes at the cost of your happiness and well-being. On top of all the family drama, I've also started getting emails from my ex-fiancée. She's been sending them every couple of days now. At first, I just ignored them, but eventually I gave in and opened one. I almost wish I hadn't because they were all the same. She's begging me to reconsider and keeps emphasizing how much I could help her and her child. Each email is more desperate than the last, and now she's even started sending pictures of the kid. I get that she's in a tough spot, but the whole thing feels manipulative. She knows I'm not heartless, and I think she's trying to use that against me again. It's like she knows if she tugs at my heartstrings, I'll cave. The thing is, I'm not stupid. I see what she's doing, but I can't pretend it doesn't make me feel guilty. I didn't ask for those pictures, and I didn't want them, but she knows I'll look at them. And the kid's face in those pictures, his little eyes looking up at me, guilt trips me more than anything else. I can't shake the feeling that I'm letting him down, even though I know I'm doing the right thing by not getting involved. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, one of my old friends called me out of the blue. He's someone I haven't spoken to in years, but apparently he heard about the whole situation through the grapevine. He called me late one evening, and when I saw his name on the screen, I almost didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood to have another "you should do the right thing" conversation, but I picked up anyway. He didn't even waste time with pleasantries, just jumped right in, saying I should be the bigger person and help my ex-fiancée out, even if it's just to protect the child. He went on about how I couldn't just let a kid suffer because of what my brother did. I don't know if he didn't get the full picture of everything or if he just didn't care, but it was clear to me that he was just assuming I'd help because it was the moral thing to do. He painted it like I was some kind of monster for not immediately jumping to her aid. I told him I couldn't help and that this was a situation between her, my brother, and my family, not me. But he wasn't hearing it. He said I was being stubborn, that I was holding on to grudges, and that this kid needed me. He made it sound like I was abandoning someone who was clearly in need. But that's the thing. She's not the only one in need. I've spent so many years in this toxic environment, taking care of everyone else's problems and never dealing with my own. I'm done with that. I ended the call quickly, but it left me feeling even more conflicted. As much as I wanted to defend myself and explain why I wasn't going to get involved, I didn't. I know it's not my responsibility to clean up this mess. I know she and my family made their choices, and now they have to live with them. But the guilt, it's still there. No matter how hard I try to shake it, it's been hard to focus on anything else lately. I find myself second-guessing everything. The other day, I went out with some friends to try to take my mind off things, but I couldn't stop thinking about the situation. One of them even joked about how I was being a good Samaritan for not getting involved, and I had to laugh, but it wasn't funny. It just made me feel even more isolated. None of my friends really understand what I'm going through with this. The few people I have left from that old life are either too scared to speak up or just assume I'm doing the right thing. But it doesn't feel like the right thing, not when a kid is in the middle of all this. I've also been thinking about how my ex-fiancée's situation could get worse if my brother and my parents keep pushing for full custody. I honestly don't know what could happen. My family has always been good at manipulating the system, and I've seen them do it before. I'm worried that the child could get caught in a situation that's just as bad, if not worse, than what he's already dealing with. But even with those thoughts in my head, I still can't bring myself to get directly involved. So I'm still stuck. Part of me is telling myself that staying out of it is the right call, but another part of me keeps wondering if I'm making the wrong decision. If I don't help, will I regret it forever? And if I do help, will it just drag me back into their toxic world? It's a no-win situation. What would you do in my shoes? Would you help the child even if it means getting involved with your toxic family again? Or would you just keep your distance and let them figure it out on their own? Update 3. After reading through more of your comments and spending a lot of time thinking about the situation, I decided I couldn't sit back and do nothing for the child's sake. While I don't owe my ex-fiancée or my family anything, I realized the child didn't ask to be born into this mess. He's innocent. And if I have the means to help him escape the toxic environment my brother and family have created, I should at least try. But I also knew that if I were going to do something, I had to protect my peace in the process. I'm not going to let them drag me back into their world. I've worked too hard to rebuild my life and create boundaries, and I'm not about to sacrifice all of that for a situation that's out of my control. So I spent a lot of time thinking it through, and eventually I came up with what I felt was the best compromise. I filed an anonymous report with Child Protective Services, CPS. At first, I wasn't sure if this was the right move, but as I considered the situation more, it became clear to me that this was the only way to potentially help without being dragged back into the chaos. I sat down one evening with all the information I had, everything my ex-fiancée had told me about my brother's behavior, how my parents treated her, and just how toxic and manipulative the family dynamic had always been. I included every relevant detail I could think of. I didn't just talk about the physical and emotional abuse my ex-fiancée had suffered. I also highlighted how my brother's controlling behavior had affected everyone around him, especially her, how he'd always used his charm to manipulate people, including my parents, into turning a blind eye to everything he did. I made sure to mention how my parents had enabled him at every turn, always making excuses for him and pushing me aside in the process. I know that if CPS were to look into the situation, it would give them some much-needed context about the environment the child was in. They needed to understand that it wasn't just my brother's behavior that was the problem. It was also the way my family had always chosen to enable his actions instead of holding him accountable. I even included screenshots of some of the emails my ex-fiancée had sent me. She had mentioned how scared she was for herself and the child, how she felt trapped in the marriage, and how she had no one to turn to. I knew I didn't have direct evidence of abuse toward the child, but I hoped that CPS would see enough in what I shared to open an investigation. Maybe they wouldn't find enough to intervene, but at least they would know what was going on. I needed to be sure that someone was looking out for the child, even if it wasn't me. Filing that report felt like a weight lifted off my chest. It was the right thing to do, but I didn't have to re-enter the chaos of my old life. I made sure that CPS knew I wanted to stay anonymous and that I didn't want to be contacted for follow-ups or involved in the case in any way. I didn't even want my name mentioned. I just wanted to make sure that the kid was safe, and I figured if CPS thought there was any merit to my report, they would investigate it further without my involvement. I didn't expect any immediate feedback or any kind of closure. It was unlikely CPS would give me updates, and even if they did, it would probably be after they conducted an investigation. I was at peace with knowing that I did what I could. I didn't have to reopen the old wounds of my family's mess, and I didn't have to get caught up in their drama anymore. At the end of the day, the report was the most effective way I could act without sacrificing my mental health and the life I've worked so hard to rebuild. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on moving forward, but that's easier said than done. My family is relentless, and every time I think they might leave me alone, another message or email pops up. This time, it wasn't just my mother or a distant cousin. This time, my brother himself reached out, and honestly, I didn't even know how to respond. He sent me a short message accusing me of betraying the family and being vindictive. He told me I was making a huge mistake and that I'd regret it. But there was something else in the tone of the message that made me stop and think for a second. It wasn't just anger. He was worried. I didn't even bother responding. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that everything he said was nothing but manipulation. It wasn't about him. It was about control. And I wasn't going to fall for it again. I've been through this song and dance before. It's always the same. They try to make me feel like the bad guy for setting boundaries and doing what's right. But in the end, they're the ones who've made this mess. I don't owe them an explanation anymore. Not about anything. As for my ex-fiancée, I haven't heard from her in a couple of days, which was a relief until I got one last email from her yesterday. It was short, Just a simple message that said, "Thank you, and I'm sorry for what I put you through." No details, no explanations, just those words. It left me with mixed feelings. On one hand, I'm glad she at least acknowledged the pain she caused, but on the other hand, it made me realize just how much she's going through. Maybe something has shifted in her situation, or maybe she's finally seeing the reality of her circumstances. Either way, it's clear that she's still struggling. I don't know what's going to happen next with her custody battle, but if there's even a small chance she could get the child out of that toxic environment, I hope it works out for her. But I have to remind myself that I can't get back involved. I can't fix her problems, and I've already done more than enough to help. Now it's up to the authorities. If CPS investigates and finds enough to act, I've done my part. If not, then I'll have to accept that I can't control everything, no matter how much I want to. Thank you to everyone who has offered advice, support, or even tough love. Your comments really helped me see the bigger picture, and they gave me the strength to act without second-guessing myself. And for anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, it's okay to protect your peace. You can care about others and still maintain your boundaries. Sometimes doing the right thing means stepping back and letting the system do its work. You don't have to fix everything on your own. Do what you can and leave the rest to those who are better equipped to handle it. I don't know what's going to happen next with my ex-fiancé, my brother, or any of this mess, but I know one thing. Whatever happens, I'll be okay.